Quick question for you guys before we dive into the text. You ever find yourself in a room that you have no business being in, and you know you have no business being in that room, and so you just kind of stand there wide-eyed, jaw to the ground, looking around at everything that's happening, waiting, counting the seconds until someone comes to tell you that you have no business being in this room. About 23 or so years ago, my friend John and I were invited to a special prayer event in DC. And when we got there, we were ushered into a room that was full of congressmen, senators, famous pastors, authors, celebrities, and wait for it, Moses. That's right. Your boy was in the same room as Moses. And if you think I'm lying, I don't blame you, because guess what? My friend John was with me when I was ushered into this room, and even he didn't believe me when I told him that we were in the same room as Moses. This is a true story. It's not a made-up story. 23 years ago, I was in the same vicinity, between touching distance, of the one and only, the great Charlton Heston. Anybody remember Charlton? Rudy, you remember Charlton Heston? Of course you do. You're old, right? Charlton Heston. For those of you, I'm kidding. He knows I'm kidding. It's a joke. I mean, I'm not kidding about his age, but okay. But for those of you who don't know who Charlton Heston is, he's an actor that was famous for playing the role of Moses in the Ten Commandments, right? And this is not an exaggeration. My mom's watching. She can confirm in the comments. My brothers and I, we watched the Ten Commandments so many times on the Betamax. If you don't know what that is, ask your grandparents when you get home. But we watched this so many times that even now, when I read the story of Moses in the Bible, I picture Charlton Heston's face every time. And so, yeah, you better believe that your boy was giggling like my middle school daughter when I was in the same room as Moses. I could not believe it. Again, I promise you, there is no exaggeration in this story, but I'm at this event with all these really important people in the room, and I'm just sitting there going, Moses is right there. This is the craziest thing in the world. And about an hour into the event, the person that was on stage leading the event came on stage, and they were like, hey, oh, by the way, because they were praying for different crowds of people, they're like, if you've ever served in the military, will you please just stand up? And Moses stood up. I was like, whoa. And I don't blame you if you judge me for this at all, but the speaker, this is a true story. The speaker said, hey, if you want to go lay hands on the words had barely come out of the speaker's mouth. Okay, Moses was over here. I was way over there. There was like 10 people around me, but I shot off my seat and I just went right up and I was like, yeah. I'm going to pray for Moses. This is a true story. I promise you, I did not pray one word for him that day. Like the whole time I was just like, I'm touching Moses. I was like, this is amazing. My buddy John's embarrassed. He's like, what are you doing? I'm climbing over seats and I just wanted to put my hands on Charlton Heston. It's like, this is the greatest day of my life. I still haven't washed my hands in 22 years. I'm kidding. He's like, why are you touching my jacket, bro? That's disgusting, right? And for those of you who maybe you're like, okay, what's the big deal? Who's this child? Imagine it was LeBron James, Justin Bieber, Taylor Swift, Tom Hanks, Harrison Ford. I don't know who you think. Okay, there we go. Oh, wow. Okay. I was not expecting that. Harrison Ford got more cheers than Jesus has gotten this morning. That's pretty amazing. Or imagine you're John, and you got to be in the same room as the creator and the curator of the cosmos. Revelation 5 is our anchor text for today, but before we go to Revelation 5, I just want to go back briefly to Revelation chapter 4. And if you're new and you missed the conversation, please go play catch up on YouTube. But in Revelation chapter 4, John is invited into the throne room of God. And so maybe you're like, I don't even know if I believe in God. Okay, just play along for just a little bit, okay? Imagine you're John, and you're on an island, and all of a sudden, you look, and the writer says, John is writing, he says, I looked, and there before me was a door opening in heaven, and I heard a voice. It's like the voice I first heard speaking to me like a trumpet. And the voice said to me, come up here and I will show you what must soon take place. Up here, what? Up here as in heaven. Can you imagine? It's not a rhetorical question. I really want you to try to imagine what it was like for John to hear God invite him into the throne room of God. And I want you to imagine what it must have been like, not only for John to be that close to God, but imagine what it was like when John was trying to write down everything that he saw. Like he's just looking around him like, what am I doing here? And he's trying to record it, right? And there are all these things he sees in there. He sees a throne and there was someone sitting on it. We talked about this last week. And he had the appearance of a jasper. And then he notices that there's this rainbow around the throne, right? And then there's this 24 thrones and 24 elders. And they're dressed in white. And they're wearing crowns of gold. And then there was, you guys remember this from last week, lightning and rumblings and pearls of thunder. And then there were these 7 lamps that were blazing. And there were the 7 spirits of God. And then also in front of the throne was something that looked like a sea of glass. It was clear as crystal. And around it says there were these 4 living creatures. A little bit of creepy, but also amazing. They were covered with eyes in the front and behind. The first one was kind of like a lion. He's using the word like because that's the only way he can describe what he sees. He doesn't really understand it. And the second one he says was like an ox. The third one had the face like a man. The other one was like a flying eagle. Each of these living creatures had 6 wings covered with eyes all around them, even under their wings. And I said this last week. I'm not going to re-preach the sermon, even though I really want to, because Revelation 4 is amazing. But there's a lot, obviously, going on in the throne room of God. But one thing that we cannot miss is that even though there's a lot going on, all of the focus is on one person. It's not any of the elders. It's not any of the 4 living creatures with eyes all over the place. All of the focus in heaven is on the one who is sitting on the throne. And we know that because day and night they never kept saying to the one on the throne, holy is the Lord Almighty, who was and is to come. And then you go to the end and the same thing. The living creatures are giving glory. The 24 elders, they're laying their crowns down and they are saying to the one on the throne that you are worthy to receive glory, honor, power, for you created all things, and by your will they were created and have their being. Everything that is happening in heaven and around the throne is focused on the one person on the throne. Please go listen to last week if you missed it. But that's the setup. The setup is John is invited into the throne room of God. And he's seeing all of these things and he's describing it. And in the same way that the focus was on the one on the throne by all the elders and all the creatures, John's focus now also shifts to the one on the throne. And now he's going to give us a little bit more detail. We're going to go to Revelation chapter 5 now and dive in. If you have your Bible, you can turn there. It's on the screen. As always, we love giving free Bibles away in the lobby. Grab one on your way out. Revelation chapter 5, John says, and then I saw in the right hand of him who sat on the throne. Again, that's the focus, is the one on the throne. There was a scroll. Somebody say scroll. And there was writing on both sides. And John says, and the scroll was sealed with 7 seals. He says, and then I saw a mighty angel proclaiming in a loud voice, more on that in a little bit, saying, who is worthy to break these seals and open the scroll? But no one in heaven or on earth or under the earth could open the scroll or even look inside of it. Full disclosure, when I first read this, I was like, I have no idea what this means. I was so confused when I read this a couple months ago. Okay, and I just want to say this just to kind of throw this out there, because I know sometimes it might seem kind of like an easy thing, but I just want to make sure that when you go home and you read the text and you're like, that's confusing, I have no idea what that means, I don't want you to think there's anything wrong with you, because the first time I read this, I was like, that's confusing, I have no idea what this means. And it wasn't until I started to kind of dig into some commentaries and talk to people that are a lot smarter than me that I realized that the reason the scroll in this text is so important, don't miss this, is because this scroll that John sees in the right hand of God contains the hidden mysteries of the plans and the purposes of God to redeem all of humanity. So John sees God sitting on the throne and he's holding a scroll. And you're going to see that scroll talked a lot about in this chapter. And again, the reason that scroll is a big deal is because written in that scroll is the hidden mysteries of God's plans and purposes to redeem the world. One theologian said it this way. I think his name is Joel Lawrence. It's not on the screen, but he said this. He says, the scroll that we see in this text is a symbol of hope, of understanding, of insight into the mysterious purposes of the mysterious God. To understand God and his purposes, to live in hope amidst evil, the scroll must be open. It is the hidden mysteries of the purposes of God. Let me see if I can bring it a little bit closer to home. Some of you are like, who cares? I'm bringing it a little closer to home with you. Okay, have you ever looked around you, or maybe scroll on X or Twitter or whatever we call it these days, and see the world and all the wars and all the brokenness and all of the death and all of the abuse and all the assaults and all the evil? You ever look at all of that and ask yourself, what, if anything, is an all-powerful God going to do about this broken world? Like, anybody ever wondered that? Like, okay, you're all powerful. No. Are you going to do anything about the brokenness in this world? How about this? Let me bring it even closer to home. Anybody in here, and you don't have to, you ever find your soul longing for home? Okay, I don't mean home like the place where you're going to go lay your head at night to sleep geographically. No, I mean home as in like the place where your soul can rest. You ever find yourself just longing to just be in paradise, to be with God in a place where he says there's no more death, no more sickness, no more tears, no more pain, no more cancer, no more addiction, no more prescription medicine, right? You ever find yourself some days just going, man, like, wouldn't it be nice if my soul could just get to that place where I could just, if you've ever felt that, if something inside, if you've ever felt spiritually restless and you feel like, man, there seems to be more to this life than what I'm experiencing, then you may want to lean into this text, because the scroll that God is holding on the throne contains God's plan and purposes to not only redeem a broken world, but it is God's plan to bring you home. It's his plan to bring you home. And that's the good news today, fam. The good news is, regardless of what's happening in our world, regardless of what you feel in your soul, there is a God who's not only all-knowing, all-powerful, all-loving, but he has a plan. He has a purpose to redeem all of it. That's the good news. The bad news, if you will, and you may have caught it, is that the plans are on the scroll, and the scroll is what? Sealed, right? You're like, wah, wah. He's like, it's got the scroll, it's got the plans, there's writing on both sides. But then he says this. He says the scroll is sealed with what? How many seals? 7. Right now, you guys probably already picked this up if you've been here for any part of this series. But the number 7 keeps showing up over and over and over and over again. Anybody notice that? Like all over the text, right? How many churches did Jesus write the letter to? How many stars was Jesus holding in his hand? How many lampstands were burning in the presence of God? How many living creatures were around the throne? 4. Wow, all right. I was setting you up. 9 o'clock service, you guys are smart. 11 o'clock, they're going to say 7, I promise you. And I'm going to dunk on them. Like, in your face. All right. That didn't go as well as I thought it would. I was setting you up too. Right? But the number 7 shows up over and over and over again. And we talked about this, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time in here. But the reason we see the number 7 so much in the text is because Revelation is an apocalyptic letter, right? And remember we talked about this? In apocalyptic literature, numbers a lot of times will symbolize more than just the number. And this is hard for us in the Western world because, we're very facts-driven. Number is the number. But that's not how it is in apocalyptic literature. It's kind of like in The Sixth Sense. Anybody remember The Sixth Sense? Right? Remember how the number 6 symbolize a supernatural ability to be able to sense the dead. Right? Or how in Hunger Games, number 13 was a symbol for resistance, the birth of a new order, or to do something a little bit more recently, Stranger Things 11 represents the supernatural. Well, it turns out that the number 7 in ancient literature and culture represents perfection and completion. And again, to us, we're like, 7 is 7. 7 is, you score a touchdown and get the PAT, you get 7 points. That's what 7 is. But in apocalyptic literature, in ancient Israelite culture, 7 represented so much more than that. The folks at the Bible Project put it this way. They said 7 is a symbol of completion based on the 7-day Sabbath cycle in the Old Testament. And so you guys remember back in Genesis, how many days did God take to create the world? 6. And then what did he do on the 7th day? Rested. So God created the world. This is amazing, okay? For 6 days. On the 7th day, he rested. He didn't rest because he was tired. God wasn't like, wow, man, my muscles are sore. That's been a lot of work creating the universe. No, God rested on the 7th day because he wanted to mark the completion of his work in creation. And so the 7th day was God's way of saying, it's done. It's perfected. There's nothing to be added. That is in Revelation. You guys want to see something really cool that I saw this week? On Genesis, the 7th day is a mark of God's completing his work in creation. Adam and Eve jacked everything up. The world is broken. Fast forward all the way to Revelation, and we see this 7th seal. And now the 7th seal is going to be the mark of God completing his work of redeeming all of creation. You guys catch that? So Genesis 7 was like, it's done. I've created it. I'm done. The work is done. It's perfect. Sin comes in, brokenness comes in, and then Revelation goes, okay, there's this scroll that contains my plans and my purposes to redeem all of the world, and the 7th scroll is going to mark the completion of my work. And so we see 7, and we go, 7 is just 7, but in the text, 7 isn't just 7. 7 is God saying, man, when we hit that 7th seal, man, I am going to finish the redemptive work that I began. There was a scroll, the hidden purposes of God. It contains 7 seals. Next week, we're going to look at what the seals are. It's real spicy. Please come, okay? I promise you it's going to be good. But for now, I want you to just listen to how we fit in the text. And so the writer says again, there's a scroll. Are you guys tracking, by the way? I know this is different because we're like scrolls and seals and 7. Like, what in the world, right? I promise you this is really good. He says there's a scroll. It's got 7 seals on it. The writer says, and I saw a mighty angel proclaiming in a loud voice, who is worthy to break the seals and open the scroll? If you have a Bible and you don't mind writing it, I want you to write crickets next to this, right? I want you to write crickets because guess what? This angel gets up, like, hey, who's worthy? We got the scroll. It has God's plan and purposes for the world. It's sealed with 7 seals. Man, we need somebody to break the seals open. Can anybody break the seals? Who's worthy? Anybody? Bueller? Anybody? Right? It says in the next verse, but no one in heaven or on earth or under the earth could open, you guys ready for this? The scroll or even look inside of it. SFM, I want you to let this just sink in for a second. There is a scroll that contains the purposes of God. It is sealed. An angel goes, anybody want to open the seal? Anybody able? And he says, no one. No one. Not Moses, not David, not the great prophet Elijah could open it. Esther couldn't open it. Nehemiah couldn't open it. Albert Einstein couldn't open it. Mother Teresa couldn't open it. Your praying grandma that loves Jesus more than anybody else in the world couldn't open it. Jack Bauer couldn't open it. You don't know who Jack Bauer is? He's the only reason we're here in America right now living in freedom. Different conversation for a different day. If you know, you know. Not even Jack. Think of the smartest, most powerful, most righteous. Think of anybody that you are impressed by. None of them could open it. And I love the text says, the problem wasn't just that there wasn't anybody that could open it. Do you notice how it says they couldn't open it or even what? Look. So even if you could open it, You got another problem. You're not worthy to look in it. Anybody remember Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indiana Jones? Remember when they got the Ark and they opened it and all the Nazis looked at it and their faces melted like, oh, anybody remember that? No? Maybe not the best illustration I ever came up with, but it gets the job done, right? They're like, you can't look. And Indy's like, cover your face. You can't. Nobody was worthy to open the scroll. It's like, God, you have a plan to redeem the world. We can't open it. We can't read it. And so John wept. He wept. He says, I wept and I wept. This wasn't like Denzel Washington from Glory, single tear, manly cry. He is weeping. Because if nobody can open the scroll or look inside of it, then we're doomed. Then there is no hope. If the scroll is God's plan and purpose to redeem the world and to take us home and to undo everything wrong and make it right, to wipe the tears from our faces and to defeat death finally, if no one can open it, then there is no hope. Then this is a waste of time, and we might as well just go home and relax and take a nap before we watch football at 1 o'clock today. John wept because nobody, he says, was found worthy to open the scroll or even look at it. And I wasn't there, but man, I wonder what was going through John's mind when he's weeping. And then one of the elders, remember there's 24 elders? It says, then one of the elders said to him, do not weep. Do not weep. See, he says, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, has triumphed. He is able to open the scroll and its 7 seals. All right, come on now. I got Evelyn started, and then she kind of stopped. Come on, 9 o'clock, you're killing me. He is able. And then he says this, then I saw a lamb looking as if it had been slain, standing at the center of the throne. Let me give you a quick recap. You're trying to figure out why Evelyn is the only person that was excited, and the rest of you should have been excited. John sees a vision of heaven. He sees God on a throne. He's holding a seal that contains God's hidden mysteries and purposes. This is how God's going to redeem the world and take you home. All of the brokenness is going to be made right. But the scroll is sealed, and nobody can open it. Nobody can open it. The reason the scroll is a big deal is not just because someone needs to open it, but opening it and breaking the seals not only reveals the plans of God, but it sets it in motion. It's a domino effect. And so if no one breaks the seal, then God's plan to redeem all of this is not set in motion. And so John is just weeping. He's going, this is what is going on in here, man. And then as he's weeping, he hears a voice. And one of the angels says, hey, you don't got to cry. The Lion of the tribe of Judah, he is worthy. He can break the seal. He can open it. He can look at it. And I want you guys to watch what happens. This is amazing, okay? He says, see the Lion of the tribe of Judah. If you have your Bible, I want you to just circle the word see and the word lion. And then I want you to go back to verse 6 and watch what happens. It says, then I saw a lamb. Does anybody else think it's kind of weird that the writer says that the elder said, what did the elder say? Do not weep. What's that word? See. See what? The lion. But then John looked and he saw what? A lamb. It's kind of weird, isn't it? I'm like, that's weird. Unless, of course, that's the point. And part of what God was trying to show John and show us, remember we talked about this, Revelation is an apocalypse. It's an unveiling. It's God letting us know that things are not as they seem. Part of what God is wanting John and us to see in this passage is that things are not as they seem. In other words, guess what? The Lion of the tribe of Judah is also the Lamb that was slain. If you got a Bible with you, I want you to write plot twist. Major plot twists. Shout out to M. Night Shyamalan for being the king. Is that how you say his name, by the way? Is that, okay, it just sounded weird. I was like, Shyamalan, M. Night, right? He is the king of twisting movie plots and all kinds of knots, and he's going to keep you guessing until the end, man. He's the master of that. But this SC fam, you've never seen anything like this before. You have never seen a plot twist like this before. The elder said, look, the lion, a triumphant lion, is going to open the scroll. And John looks, and what does he see? He sees a lamb. Look, lion, lamb. This is the gospel. This is the gospel. This is the mystery of the gospel. Is that the lion is also the lamb. Right? We had a teaching meeting several months ago talking about Revelation, and there were so many mini stories that we're trying to pull from it. And so we're like, hey, what are some quotes or some just themes that we can pull out from this very complicated book? And we kept talking about it. And Amy, out of nowhere, she's like, oh, I got one. She's like, Mary had a little lamb who roared. And I was like, that'll preach. That's so good. Right? And I don't know if anybody in here is sick and tired of me coming here every single week to tell you that Revelation is a prophetic and apocalyptic letter that reveals a triumphant king who is coming soon in all of his glory. Some of you are like, dude, man, I'm tired of hearing that. It's too long. I can't memorize it. If that's you, I got you. I remixed it a little bit. How is this? Revelation is a prophetic and apocalyptic letter that reveals a triumphant lamb that roared. Come on now. The lion is the what? The lamb. Okay, and I wasn't there, right? And so I don't know. John doesn't give us his personal commentary. But I wonder if for just a second, John felt a little let down. And maybe it's because lions are my favorite animal, but I felt a little let down. I'm like, if someone tells me to look to see a lion, I mean, anybody been to the zoo lately, right? Toledo Zoo, anybody been to the zoo? Okay, 5 people. What are the rest of you guys doing? There are 3 things to do in Toledo: Art Museum, Zoo, and Gus Brothers. That's it, you know? That's all we got, right? But imagine going to the zoo and you go in the lion's den, and you're like, I'm excited to see the king of the jungle, and then there's a lamb looking like it had been slain. You would be like, somebody call somebody, because this is not good. And again, I don't know what was going through John's mind, but the writer said, look to see a lion. He saw a lamb. The reality of what John saw did not match the expectation of what the elders told him to look at. Anybody remember back when the expectation versus reality meme was huge? You know what I'm talking about? People would post 2 pictures online, side by side, of their expectation, and then they would post, Jesse knows what I'm talking about, and then they would post reality. No? Nobody knows that? It's okay. I brought some examples with me. You guys, I love when I ask you a question, you just ignore me. It's my favorite thing about preaching. I'm like, this is great. This is great. We do what we can. Look at this one. Isn't that great? Any parents can relate? My wife's always cleaning when people coming over. I'm like, we're not fooling anybody. Listen, this has nothing to do with the sermon, but if I go to your house and it looks like that kid over there, I'm praying for you. I'm like, something is wrong. Like, let's call Child Protection Services. You're hiding something, okay? All right? How about this one? This is great. I love this one. The irony of joy. All right, let's stay in the parenting theme. How's that one? Anybody been this one? Yeah, anybody know what I'm talking about? You guys can relate, right? It doesn't really match. Let's move away from the parenting one. How about that guy? Nailed it. Nailed it. Imagine if your kid's like, I want a whole cake, and you're like, I got you, honey. And that kid's in counseling now, going, I don't know what happened. Show you another one. Anybody ever been there for this one? Those commercials are the worst, I'm like, wow, it looked so much better when I was seeing it on TV, you know? All right. Can I show you one more example of where reality did not meet the expectation? If you've ever wondered why so many of the people in the first century did not recognize Jesus as the Messiah, it's because the reality didn't match their expectation. See, for all of these years, the prophets prophesied and promised that a Messiah was going to come. And the Messiah was going to come, and he was going to be the Lion of the tribe of Judah. And when people heard that God was going to send a Messiah that was going to be the Lion of the tribe of Judah, they were expecting a military conqueror that was going to roll into town, march into Rome, and liberate them. And so you can imagine their shock when the Lion of the tribe of Judah was nailed to the cross like a lamb. You can imagine their shock. And maybe this is one of those things that you and I are not going to understand, because we know how the story ends, and we're like, yeah, we know he's the savior of the world. But you have to understand that for these people, messiahs don't die on a cross. Lions aren't crucified by their enemies. And that's why, by the way, when Jesus told his closest friends, these guys, they saw him walk on water. He told them that he was going to be arrested, beaten, crucified, and killed. They thought he had lost his mind. Peter pulled Jesus aside to rebuke him. Any parents in here ever have to pull your kids out of maybe you're at a restaurant or in a public place and your kid's acting up and you got to pull them to the parking lot to have a conversation with them? Anybody? Okay, 3 of us. The rest of you have perfect kids. That's awesome. Peter, this is crazy to me. Peter pulls Jesus aside. He's like, come here. We got to talk. He's like, take it back. You're the Messiah. You can't die. The reason, fam, that Peter had the audacity to rebuke Jesus is because he couldn't see what John saw in Revelation. He couldn't see that the triumphant lion is also the lamb that was slain. He couldn't see that the way the lion was going to overcome evil was by death. He couldn't see that the way the lion was going to conquer his enemies was by dying for them so that he could then redeem them. Peter couldn't see it. Nobody could see the conundrum of the lion that's also the lamb. But then we come to Revelation 5, and John sees it. John sees it. John sees that the reality is that the lamb that was slain is actually lion. He realizes that the way the lion was going to conquer was by giving his life. Now John sees it, and the 24 elders sees it, and everybody that's before the throne of God, they see the full plan of God. And I want you guys to watch how they respond. Watch how they respond to what they see. The writer says this. It says in verse 5. It says he saw the lamb it was looking as if he had been slain, standing at the throne of God, encircled by the 4 living creatures. And then he says, the lamb, describing this lamb, here's our word, here's that word again, 7 horns, 7 eyes, the 7 spirits of God. Don't be creeped out. It's just perfection. It's complete. That's what the text is saying here. It says, so now the lamb went up and he took the scroll from the right hand of him who sat on the throne. No one could take the scroll. The lamb's like, I can take the scroll. The lamb goes up, grabs the scroll that contains the hidden mysteries of God. And then he says this. He says, when he had taken it, the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders all fell before the lamb. You're like, it's a lamb that had been slain. I would understand if they fell before a lion, a roaring, triumphant lion. This is a lamb that looked like he had been slain. They fell before the lamb. Each of them had a harp. They were holding golden bowls full of incense, which are, more on this in a little bit, the prayers of God's people. And then he says this. He says, and then they sang a new song. Thank you, Alex, for teaching us a new song today. Apparently, they're singing new songs in heaven, too. He says they sang a new song, and they said, you. Who is you in this text? You is what? The Lamb. So they say, you. Obviously, no one else could. You, they said, are worthy to take the scroll and open its seals. And here's why you are worthy. Because you, the Lamb, were slain. And with your blood, you purchased for God persons from every tribe, language, and people and nation. And not only did you purchase them, but you have made them to be a kingdom and priests to serve our God, and they will reign on earth. I wrote this the other day. I read this the other day, and I wrote this in my Bible. You can't make this up. You can't make it up. You can't make it up. And I know some of you are skeptical about God and you're still exploring. But I've never heard a story like this before. Have you? Have you ever heard of a God who overcomes evil by death? A God who conquers his enemies by dying for them so that he could redeem them. Have you ever heard of a God who is so invested in the lives of his children that he purchased through his blood that the writer says that the prayers of his people are the aroma that fills his temple? Did you guys catch that? When he said that earlier, just a quick side note. Can we just go back for just a second? He says, there are these elders in heaven. They're holding these bowls full of incense. And then he says this. He says the incense is what? It's the prayers of God's people. Derek, I don't know what you and Eric have been praying for, what you're trusting God for. I don't know when or how God will answer that prayer. But if Revelation 5 is true, it means that not only are your prayers more meaningful than you've ever dared to believe, but it means this whole idea that our prayers just bounce off the ceiling is a lie from the pit of hell. And we know that, Derek, because the text says that right now there are elders in the presence of God, and they're holding these golden bowls, and it is filled with incense. This is the aroma in the house of God. And it says the incense that makes the house of God smell good is your prayer, and your prayer, and your prayer, and my prayer, and your prayer. That is the incense that fills the house of God. I've never thought about it that way before. About 30 minutes ago, I was on my knees praying before I came up on stage, and I just was thinking to myself, I was like, this is crazy. I was just trying to imagine what it was like for my prayers, the words that are coming out of my mouth, to rise up into the throne room of the Almighty God. Soma City, can we just take just a minute to just pause and just consider what it means that you right now are at 4621 Glendale, and you can open your mouth, and the words that come out will rise above the ceiling, into the skies, into the throne room of the maker of the universe. I'm going to give you a couple seconds to just let that sink in. Incense is the aroma of your prayers in God's house. And if you're one of those people in the room who are like, man, I don't even remember the last time that I prayed to God or talked to God. I don't have a relationship with God. I'm not one of God's people. If that is you and you don't know where to start, I got you. This is the prayer that we ask people to pray every single Sunday. Jesus, I believe and I give you my life. It is such a simple prayer, but I am telling you, this prayer has the power to rise to the throne room of God and cause a literal disruption. Jesus says in Luke 15 that when one sinner turns to God, so if there's one person in the room today and you're like, I don't know where I am with God, I don't know if we have a relationship. Jesus literally said, if you pray a prayer like this, if you decide that you're going to turn, change your mind, repent, turn towards God, he says that there is rejoicing in heaven among the angels in the presence of God. This is insane. That you can say a few words at 4621 Glendale, and all of the angels in heaven go crazy. I was at Nara's game yesterday, and we creamed the other team. Pray for them, right? They didn't score a single goal. We scored a lot of goals, right? That's besides the point. But every time our team scored, because we're on, this side and the other team's on that side, the other fans, every time because I can't sit. I have to stand behind everybody because I have problems, I'm too competitive. But every time they scored, the entire sideline just went, whoa! This is heaven when one person turns to Jesus. The entire, all of the angels just, and I gotta be honest with you guys, I used to read that verse in Luke 15 where Jesus says there's rejoicing in heaven when one sinner turns to God. And I used to think, well, the angels are they're rejoicing because they're just excited for us. They're just pumped for the person who's getting baptized, the person who just come to know Jesus. And while that is certainly a part of it, SC fam, I think it's deeper than that. I think the reason the angels are losing their minds when one person turns to God in heaven is not just because they're celebrating the comeback and the life change. I think part of the reason the angels lose their mind every single time is because, once again, they are reminded that there's only one person who is worthy to open the scroll and break the seals. I think they're not just celebrating us. I think they're worshiping the Lamb. I think they're going, you've done it again. You've done it again. You've done it again. We did not think it was possible. We didn't think it was possible, but you have redeemed once again men and women. Regardless of their past, you've redeemed them into your story. No one was worthy to open the scroll except for the Lamb. And every time the Lamb did, guess what happened every time the Lamb did? All of heaven erupted in worship. Can I read you the rest of the text? You may want to brace for this. This is amazing. It says, then I looked, the writer says, and then I heard the voice of many angels. I heard them numbering thousands upon thousands, 10,000 times 10,000. They encircled the throne and the living creatures and the elders. And there it is again, a loud voice. They kept saying, worthy is the Lamb. Why are they saying worthy is the Lamb? Because the Lamb's the only one that could break the seal and set the motion to set God's redemptive plan into motion. Worthy is the Lamb because he was slain to receive power and wealth and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and praise. And then he says, I heard every creature in heaven and on earth and under the earth and under the sea and all that is in them, and they are all saying to one who sits on the throne and to the Lamb be praise, honor, glory, power forever and ever. And the four living creatures said amen, and all the elders fell down and worshiped the one on the throne and the Lamb. This is the gospel. This is the gospel. And I don't know what you think of when you hear him describing the scene around the throne of God. But when I first read it, this is what I saw. Can I just put it in perspective for you, and then we'll worship and go crazy? For those of you, I don't know how many of you guys watched the Euros earlier this year. It's the UEFA European one person. That's what I figured. I'm not surprised by that. But something happened. England was playing a match. It's one of the most popular tournaments, football, soccer tournaments in the world. England was playing a match. They were losing. They had 26 seconds left. Jared, you remember this, right? And Jude Bellingham scores a bicycle kick from inside the box, right, to tie the game. And I want to show you a reaction video of how fans reacted when he scored the goal. And I'm going to show it to you without audio because I want you to just see it before you hear it. Okay, so again, you guys remember? The Euros are on. They're going to lose. Scores a last-minute goal. And this is how people reacted. Tom, check this out. One guy's clapping because they're losing. Not very excited. 26 seconds. Wait for it. Look at that. And someone tells me men don't like hugs. Look at that. My favorite guy's coming up in here. Shirt off, crying. Look, wait, he's coming. It's my favorite guy in this whole clip. Look at this. You ready? You're going to see him in that corner over there in a second. Yeah, look at that guy. Look at him. You see he's going to turn around in a second. Look at his face. Look at his face. Look at his face. Look at his face. That guy had to go to work the next day. Like, bro, I saw you like crying. Again, the context, a goal was scored with 26 seconds left. Everybody lost their minds. Now that you guys have seen it, I'm going to show you the video again. But I want you to hear it. And the reason I want you to hear it is because, again, in the text, if you remember, John doesn't say, I look and I saw angels. He says, I look and I what? Heard. Okay, and so I showed it to you the first time without audio because I didn't want the audio, I didn't want the what you see to distract you from what you hear. And heads up, I told them to turn it up a little more than normal. So if you might want to like plug your ears. But we're going to watch the same video, but this time, don't worry about what you see. I want you to focus on what you hear. Go ahead, Tom. He put a rubber ball in the back of a net. I promise you none of these guys' lives were changed because of that. And no shame, no shade. If it was Nigeria and I was there, I would be the one crying, shirtless, and my wife would be in the corner going, this is embarrassing. John, come on now, church, come on. John says, I heard the voice. So I don't know how many people were there, but just think about what you just heard. And he says it's the voice of many angels, 10,000 times 10,000. If my math is correct, that's 100 million. And so he says, I see the throne of God, and there's 100 million. It feels like 100 million angels in the presence of God. In a loud voice, 100 million, loud, proclaiming, losing their minds. Why? Because finally somebody can open the scroll. Somebody can set into motion God's redemptive plan. They were losing their minds because they couldn't believe that the Lion just overcame by giving his life and purchasing men from all nations and making them to reign on earth. 100 million voices. I'm going to tell you right now, if you got hearing problems, you may want to pack some earplugs when you go to heaven, because it's going to be loud. It's going to be real loud. I don't know how loud it's going to be. I'm not saying it's going to be loud all of the time, but I promise you it is going to be loud in heaven, because loud worship is the only reasonable response to the Lamb who was worthy to open the scroll and break it and redeem men and women from every nation. And I know, SFM, I know the whole sports thing has been overplayed, but you have to understand. Do you, I mean, of course they responded that way. And I hope you understand why I think that it's not too much to ask that we sometimes ought to respond the way they respond. Because think about it, if it is true that there was a lamb who opened the seals of God's plans, and he has set God's plans in motion, and finally, eventually, the seventh seal is going to complete the work of God. If that is true, if it is true that he purchased men and women like you and I from every tongue, tribe, and nation, if it is true that the lamb has now made us priests in his kingdom, if it is true that he has opened the seal, then what else does he have to do? What else does he have to say for us to agree with all of the angels in heaven that worthy is the Lamb who was slain to receive all the power and all the wealth and all the wisdom and all the strength and all the honor and all the glory and all the praise? To him who sits on the throne and to the Lamb be praise, honor, glory, power forever and ever. What else does he have to do?